So I'm Chahrazed. I work for Karger, and we'll be hosting with Iola Forster here a workshop on Omni-Format engagement. So you may wonder what does that mean, because usually we heard about omni-channel engagement, but you will get the answer to that in a minute. Let me introduce you who we are. So we are Karger Publishers, which is a global active medical scientific publisher based in Basel, Switzerland. And our purpose is to connect and advance health sciences by publishing, creating, and disseminating medical content, medical information. So a few notes about me. I'm Chahrazed. I live in France, Brittany, and I am originally from Marrakesh, as this slide says. And I love football, which is something personal that you can know about me. Soccer, football, yeah. So I'm French and American. Both nations are really good at football. So
Football, soccer, yeah.
not quite proud of it, right? So that was just something about me, and I don't know if you are too much into football. What about you, Iola?
No, not that really. I'm not that much into football, to be honest. I actually
It's because you are German.
maybe you never know. Yeah, could be a reason for that. Well, actually, I'm more the type of person that prefers to get comfortable with a good book, or else I get creative by baking. And while we're at it, actually, I'd love to introduce myself in a little more detail. So my name is Iola, as you have learned. I've been working for Karger for almost 15 years now. I was born in Kyrgyzstan, but I grew up and live in Germany, actually directly at the border to Switzerland, so not far away from the Karger Publishers headquarters in Basel. I have a daughter who turned 9 this year, and she's actually the one that gets to taste and rate my baking creations from time to time.
Lucky her.
Yeah, sometimes.
And lucky me when I come to the office.
Exactly. But yeah, maybe enough of us now. Let's get to the actual topic that we wanted to talk about today, Omni-Format engagement strategies. And I would like to start with that. 1.3 million. That is the number of research papers added in Medline in 1 year. I mean, that's an incredible number, right? And a vast amount of valuable and crucial information. But the question is, can we tell how much of this information in those research papers really reaches its intended audience through only this one channel? So I think we've all realized in the meantime that it's no longer sufficient to disseminate information through only one channel, right? And this is that leads to the idea of omnichannel, right? So what does omnichannel mean, however? Omni originates, as you may know, from the Latin word for all, while channel refers to the method of interaction between two parties, as well as the path that information takes from one party to another, right? But if you think about it, you may realize that something is missing here, and that's the vessel to transport the information, which actually is a format. So let me give you an example. Messaging apps, right? I guess you are using messaging apps, Telegram, WhatsApp, Twitter, a lot of them. So those messaging apps are actually channels to communicate, right? And in those channels, you have different formats available, right? You can send a text message, audio message, video, photo, and you can even combine those formats, right? And depending on the current situation or the mood you're in and the person you are communicating with, you decide what format you prefer to choose to convey your message, right? And talking about preferences, this actually leads us to thinking about learning patterns, because everyone has their own unique way of consuming information, right? We have the reading type, then there are people that prefer to consume information by watching or listening or by discussing in a group with peers. And then there's another type that learns by experiencing or doing something themselves. So, and these learning patterns can be linked to formats, right? So for the reading type, for instance, you may choose text as opposed to the audio type that may prefer audio, right? But it's also important to keep in mind that those learning patterns can change throughout the day. So let me give you another example. I am a reading type, so I consume information in the traditional way of reading texts. But after a long day in front of a screen, working through thousands of emails and documents, I really may prefer to choose an audio format at the end of the day over a text. So, Chahrazed, what about you? What type are you?
I've always described myself as being someone visual, so I like to see words, I like to see text or a graph or a visual abstract, for instance. I think this is the best way for me to retain the information. But well, if I think about it, with a full-time job, 3 kids, and wanting to learn more and more, I found it audio resources to be quite convenient as well. So I'm adding that type of format as well to my habits now.
Yeah, there you go, right? 2 different people, 2 different personalities, different life situations, and so the consumption preferences differ, right? And they can change throughout the day. So I think that said, we can conclude that to effectively reach a broader audience, it's beneficial to provide content in different formats that cater to those different learning and consumption preferences and situation. And this approach can help people to consume and retain the information more effectively, which can ultimately lead to a comprehensive understanding of the subject matter.
Yeah, let's ask a question to this private room. What are your preferred formats to get the information or to learn something new? Would you go for reading or something more visual, audio? Again, Laura. All right, good. What about you? Good, right. Do you recognize yourself in one of those types as well? Okay. Okay. And you, sir? Okay. Sure. Yeah. Exactly. I'm not surprised by your answers. So let's go to the next slide if you don't mind. So just imagine now that this is also that you are trying to reach a busy HCP. So if we take an example of a cancer specialist, for instance, let's say that she is 35 years old, have been working for 4 or 5 years in her field, and she does a lot of overtime. However, she is interested in artificial intelligence, and also she likes to travel and also to socialize with family and friends. So that makes her having a really, really busy life. So how she will consume information? Let's say that, or let's presume that because she is relatively young, she will probably, and she travels a lot, she will probably prefers digital formats like videos or podcasts over printed resources. We also said that she's very busy with overtime and so on, so bite-sized content might be preferred over lengthy resources. That is something also to take into consideration. But we know that she is interested in artificial intelligence. She might also prefer, let's say, innovative ways of getting access to content. So maybe adding a 3D animation could be something that she would be interested in having or in seeing. So of course, it's just an example. It doesn't mean that everyone is like that. Every cancer specialist have the same preferences. So what we are trying to say here is that you really need to understand how they consume the information, what the preferences are based on social parameters, for example, which country they are from, and which kind of habits they may have when it comes to getting access to the medical information. This is about HCPs, but what about patients? We also need to understand how patients get access, want to get access to the information. And for that, it also depends on different criteria. One of them is the particular disease they are suffering from, but also, for example, the work of the patient advocacy group they follow. This is something that they rely on. This is something that we need to take into consideration as well. And last but not least, the region of the world they are from. So this is something that we need to also consider. So what I would like you to keep in mind is one single characteristic of your audience may change how to best reach them, whether it's a patient or a healthcare professional. Coming back to the patient, there is also something I would like to mention. It's not just the format that you need to consider, it's also the language. And this is essential because, of course, you're not going to use the same language, the same jargon with an HCP, with a clinician, than with a patient. So you will need, with a patient, you will need to explain all those complex medical terms into plain language, a very digestible and comprehensive way to make sure that the patients will understand and comprehend what you are saying in the piece of content. This approach will, of course, improve the knowledge transfer, but also enhances the patient outcomes. And most importantly, helps the patient, empowers the patient to take informed decisions about their health. And I think what we have in common in this room is that we want to improve patients' life, patient outcomes. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think with that in mind, right, the learning patterns, the changing consumption preferences, the importance of knowledge transfer, the language, you can develop an engagement strategy, right? Let's take a minute on that, right? So usually it all starts with a single piece of research, right? That needs to be published to get accredited and acknowledged. Well, this single piece of research can be considered as a seed, if you will, that you plant and that can be grown into much more, right? So let me give you another example. So we all know now, or have known that not everyone can understand highly scientific information, just simply because differences in their education or background. So to grow that seed, you can now translate the information into patient language or easy to understand language for HCPs, such as summary sheets. And in addition to that, so we're here actually, you know, that's the research, that's the additional language. And then in addition to that, animations, video, or podcasts can enhance the audience's experience. So to develop an effective engagement strategy, it is essential to consider both communication extensions, which would be this part, and communication enhancements, which would be that part. And this involves combining formats and channels to make the topic more accessible to the audience and draw them in. And it is crucial to thus tailor your approach based on the target audience and the content you're communicating in order to both extend and enhance your message. And in order to do so, or by doing so, you can now also think about implementing a tactical plan. And that's an example of how such a tactical plan could look like. So in this example, a customer approached us with a request to accelerate the knowledge transfer to remote areas of the world after a significant oncology conference. And to achieve this, we did not only create different formats, but we also put them into a tactical order, right? So we started with creating a summary sheet. I have a pointer actually here. Here, there you go, a summary sheet. That was published right after the conference because the first goal was to get information out quickly, while concurrently working on the scientific peer-reviewed paper. Well, because the second goal was to get that information scientifically accredited. And this scientific paper was published later in the relevant in the relevant disease awareness month, and accompanied by a series of podcast interviews with subject matter experts, along with an interview with a patient sharing their perspective as well. And in addition, we developed a dedicated landing page, as you can see here, and implemented an audience generation campaign through social media channels to drive traffic to that content and increase the reach of those formats and the content the customer wanted to convey. And yeah, that's one example, but I will hand back to you to share another example of a rare disease awareness suite that we created recently.
Okay. So who can pronounce that straight away? Okay. So no. So yeah, as an independent third party, we have been approached to create a suite of resources on Wallenstrom macroglobulinemia. Sorry for the pronunciation, but that was not an easy one. Right, and so we have been approached to create different formats, different content, because the challenge for this rare disease is the little awareness among HCPs and patients. So after consulting key opinion leaders in the field and also patient experts, we have developed a series or a suite of different medical information resources to help, as you can see here in this slide, to educate and engage hematologists, oncologists, patients, but also caregivers on this blood cancer. That was the main purpose and also the main challenge. So in this project, the importance of the patient involvement was essential. We decided to embark in patients from day one into the creation of the content, because it's not just to say that we are patient-centric. What does that mean? It's really important to have them from day one and hear their voice and value their voice, because at the end they are the one who knows by experience. So for us, we are very proud to have that project done with patients. So we had 2 key advocacy groups working with us on that project. After we realized those different formats, we distributed them at different patient events, and also digitally via newsletters, on learning hubs. It was mainly a series, as you can see here again, podcast, videos, infographics, or a combination of different formats that will help us to satisfy the different learning styles of patients and clinicians. So mission done. So yeah, and again, I will repeat myself, by involving patients into the creation of the content, it helps us value and let patients express how they will improve their conditions by knowing more about their own conditions. Because again, we all want to improve patients' life.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. That's very true. And I know we are approaching the end of the session, so I will hurry up a little bit. Yeah, maybe to conclude, why integrate Omni-Format, right? As you said, it's all about improving patient outcomes, right? And this is why it is crucial to consider Omni-Format in your scientific communication plan, because it is essential to make the information accessible and engaging to your audience, right? And this will hopefully or usually lead to improved clinical practice and health outcomes for patients. And so, yeah, please consider Omni-Format in your engagement strategies. And with that, I will actually already move on to some key takeaways that we wanted to share to close that. So make information more accessible by considering communication extensions and communication enhancements in your scientific communication plan. Reach a wider audience by integrating an omni-format approach in your engagement strategy, and provide credible and digestible information considering the consumption preferences and also the differences, as we said, in education and background of your audience when disseminating that information.
Any question?
One clarification maybe.
Yeah,
I
sure.
have a question. What do you mean reach a wider audience? We have, target audience, it's all. Any time I have to say it's specific, we have cardiologists or neurologists, and we are targeting this specific target audience. How we can widen it? What kind of goal we reach? Because we define our target audience, right?
Yeah.
For example, cardiologists, and we are making any efforts, all the effort we put to reach as much as possible cardiologists that we define for us.
But do you also consider those different consumption preferences, for instance? Because even within those cardiology communities, right, people may prefer to consume it in different ways, but also, even if they're all HCPs, they do also may have differences in language, or they may require, as we said, an easy to understand language over a more medical scientific content, right? And this is what we mean by considering those different consumption preferences, by considering different formats of how to reach your audience. We believe that this will facilitate you really reaching your target audience. Yes, it is a defined audience. Those are cardiologists, but within that audience, that community, preferences and people are different, right? And so they are consumption preferences.
But more engaged.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Yeah, you can also. Exactly. Yeah, that's. You can also put it that way. Yeah.
True.
Very true.
Thank you.
All right. With that, thank you very much. If you have any additional questions, we're here today and tomorrow. So please step by the booth, and we're happy to have further conversations.
Yeah, or connect via the app, or we're here. Thank you very much.